Your voice is worth more than you think. Lauren Davis reveals how speaking directly into your audience's earbuds can spark genuine connections that last. Learn the strategic moves that naturally convert podcast fans into consulting clients without the pushy sales tactics. From building trust through storytelling to creating irresistible content that sells itself, discover how your voice can become your most powerful business asset. Your podcast isn't just content, it's your pathway to premium clients. Hello, incurable creators. I'm excited to bring you some bonus episodes featuring exclusive interviews from the 2023 PodUp Virtual Podcasting Summit. Each Thursday for months, you're going to hear interviews from a diverse range of podcasting and marketing experts. My hope is these repurposed interviews will inspire you with new ideas and insights to take your podcast to the next level. And of course, remember to listen every Tuesday for our regular episodes of Podcasting Secrets as well. Now, let's dive into today's bonus interview from PodUp's 2013 Podcasting Summit. Hello, I'm Nathan William, the CEO of PodUp, and your host for the Podcasting Summit. I'm joined in this interview by Lauren V. Davis. Lauren is the founder of Lauren Davis Creative. That's a marketing and branding consultancy that helps speakers and authors and thought leaders and coaches around the world. She's also the host of the Real Personal Branding podcast, and she built and ran a record store for 15 years. And in this interview, we're going to talk with Lauren about podcasters creating a consulting business and consultants creating a podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to join you on this very cool podcasting summit. So thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey in creating a podcast and a consulting firm?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it kind of started when I was 19 and I opened a record store with my then boyfriend who became my husband and now my ex-husband. I don't work with that record store anymore, but it was my baby for 15 years. I worked really hard to understand the messages and the stories that helped people want us to be their record store. You know, it wasn't just a record that they were buying. It was dropping a needle on a vinyl for the first time. And it was the first record someone ever bought. And it was the first date location or the first time someone played an acoustic set inside a store in front of an audience. And that record store really gave me the power and enthusiasm to dive into what makes people want to support a certain business, what makes people want to support a different personality or a certain personality. And so that was the legs and the foundation of building my personal branding and marketing consultancy. As I really leaned into that and started hearing from other people, other businesses, other speakers, authors, thought leaders, podcasters around the world, they started kind of leaning in and saying, hey, how did you start this? How did you build this? What is it that you're doing that other people aren't doing that is connecting you and networking you with all of these people? And so basically what I developed is I took these small business concepts that I learned from running a store for so long and learning it all from scratch. You know, I started so young, learning it all from scratch. I took those small business concepts and I applied them to personal branding, to thought leadership, and what better way to be a leader in your industry than to have a podcast?
So you're mentioning one of the big benefits here of having a podcast in that it helps you establish thought leadership. What are some of the other big benefits of having a podcast for consultants?
I mean, when I think about how important having a podcast is, it's really helping people identify you as a personal brand, you as a leader in your industry. So it helps you bring value just as a personal brand does. It helps you have more power and knowledge inside your industry. It starts conversations, right? You get to have conversations with amazing, interesting people all over the place. It can be a tool for having client conversations even. Sometimes I've interviewed somebody and afterwards they ask me how they could work with me. That's so cool, right? It builds trust. It gives you opportunities. I can't say that there are very many tools that are right there in front of you that can do all of those things at once.
So let's go the other direction then. We've talked about the benefits of a consultant getting a podcast. What are the benefits of a podcaster getting a consulting practice?
Like I said, podcasting is really such a great tool for using it for your consultancy. So if you are looking at it from the other way around, you can say, well, podcasting helps me personally, me, Lauren, build my consultancy by the way of people get to listen to me in the most intimate spaces every day on their commute, in their cars, at the gym, maybe even they turn it on podcast while they're in the shower. Every day somebody has me talking in their ears. And you think about how the foundation of building a brand and building a business that people want to buy things from is trust. What better way to build trust with your clients or with the people that you serve than by talking to them and sharing the things that you know and asking great, great questions to the people that you interview than through podcasting.
Lauren, what are the 3 most important things that a podcaster should do if they want to start a consulting practice?
I actually think I have 5. So the first thing that you want to think about if you're starting a consultancy, you're starting your personal brand and you're doing it by the means of using podcasting as a tool, is you want to ask yourself, will people find you? And the reason why you want to ask yourself that is because you want to say, okay, if somebody knows me, they meet me at a networking event or they meet me out at a podcasting conference or something like that, and they know something about me, just some kind of identifying characteristic, and then they Google me, what are they going to find? Well, if you have a podcast, that allows you to be found so much more easily, right? You can put yourself in as the host, you can put your name into the description, and it pulls up your interviews and your website that hosts your content and pulls you up as an expert when people are searching to find you. That's one of the foundational aspects of building a personal brand. The second part being how will they experience you once they get there is how are you building a relationship with them once they do find you? So they're finding you on Google. They might see your podcast. Once they click on your podcast or they click on your social media, they're going to experience you in a certain way. So on social media, if you want to be known as a speaker or as an author or as a podcaster, you might want to make sure that you have a few photos in those first 9 photos that share that you are doing the thing that you say you do, right? You want some validation there. When people click on your podcast to listen to your podcast, you want them to experience who you are. Like who makes you what you are? Why are you the expert? What kinds of experiences have you experienced in this life that give you the expertise and the knowledge that you have now? So that's number 2 is how will they experience you? How will you continue your relationship with them is number 3. So that means continued content, right? How are you creating content in a consistent manner to build relationships over time and to show people that you are not going away, to show them that you are going to show up consistently for them. And so those would be the top 3. And I know you have a few more questions that might kind of help me get those last 2 out.
Let's talk about marketing your consulting services. Let's say you had a podcast and you launch a consulting service of some type. How do you effectively market that?
Okay, so there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. One of my favorite ways, and this actually brings up a good point, is number 4 in that list of 5 is, do you have a simple operating system for selling, right? That's the 4th kind of wheel. And what I mean by that is when somebody finds you and they experience your content and they continue the relationship with you and then they want to buy something for you, do you have a system? So when I work with clients, I work really hard to help them figure out what that journey might be from anywhere that the person that could be their potential client might come in, right? So if it's a podcast, you'll want to have a link for people to book you or to connect with you in your show notes. You want to share with them ways that they can get in contact with you. I know at the end of my podcast, I always tell people, I am on Instagram as L Davis Creative. You can find me as L Davis Creative practically everywhere. And it's really me behind the scenes on my Instagram. So if you DM me on Instagram, or if you email me at info@laurendaviscreative.com, you are going to get me. I am the only person replying to those emails. I'm the only person on Instagram replying to those DMs. And I would love to know what you thought about this episode. I also tell people, you can book a call with me. You can book a discovery call with me. There's a link in the show notes for that as well. But one thing that we haven't talked about is how you can monetize your podcast without doing something like that might be predictable, like a sponsorship or something. For instance, one of the examples that I have is that I host a accelerator for women, which is one of the things that just fills me up inside. It gives me so much, I have so much passion for it, is seeing other women succeed. And so I have an accelerator for them starting in October. And on the last few podcast episodes at the very end, I just simply talk about it. I talk about a little bit behind the scenes of what we're planning. I talk about how not only is it an accelerator for women, but we are also hiring all women speakers. So all of our expert speakers are also women. It's special. It's exciting. My podcast is not only for women, of course, but I wanted to talk about it because it's something I'm truly excited about. And so I just talk about it a little bit. I'm calling it in my head a little commercial, right, for this podcast or for this accelerator. But it's not a commercial. I'm just having a conversational description of what it actually is and what we're offering and why I'm so excited about it. And I can tell you that the first time I released that commercial was this last week when I released my last podcast episode. And I had 2 people sign up for the accelerator last week, right when my podcast came out. And that is that's like a true to life example. And I'm blessed to have the amount of followers that I do and the amount of subscribers to my podcast that I do. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't have the same amount of listens as, Glennon Doyle or any of these, huge names. I don't have anywhere near those types of followers or those amounts of listeners or subscribers, but doing that work to really build that trust and build those relationships ahead of time, and then at the end or somewhere in there, just sharing something that you're excited about that you might be selling, people are rooting for you. They are building that relationship with you. They trust you. And if they are the right client, they will buy from you.
Yeah. Okay. So you've mentioned putting your information in your show notes and encouraging people to buy from you at different points in the process. Let's say someone is interested and they would like to learn more about your consulting services. What kind of flow do you recommend to get people booked for your services?
Well, I always ask people to figure out what the place is online that they like to hang out, right? So for instance, for me, it's Instagram. I love being on Instagram. It feels like a warm hug on Instagram, like a nice, friendly place where my social media exists. So a lot of times I lead people to where I think, 1, my audience is showing up the most, and 2, my favorite place, the easiest place of contact for me. So one of the things I do is I send them to my social media. The second thing I do is I send them to my email list or to my website. And the third thing I do is I send them to a booking link. I also obviously leave the link for whoever I've interviewed on my show notes as well. But my rule for myself is that I always like to get people to be connected to me in 3 different places. And the reason why I do that is because people will sign up for your email with their company email address, and then they move on from that company. And now that email contact with them doesn't exist anymore. Or people will only sign up to follow you on social media, right? And then when social media disappears one day or Instagram goes down for the day, you have no contact with those people. So you want to be connected with them in an email. So I always say, try to pick 3 places to show up for them. And as far as what my flow does, is I leave a couple links like that. But what I try to think about is what is the easiest way for someone to get in contact with me? And that doesn't mean that what's easiest for my clients is easiest for your clients, right? That means, like, for me, my clients are all about 35 to 45. Like, that's not all of them, but that's where the bigger clump of them are. And they're on Instagram. They're on Instagram and they're scrolling TikTok. And so for me, the easiest non-salesy flow is to get them to Instagram and then to get them on my email list.
You're going where they are instead of making them come to you. I like that.
Yeah. And the easiest flow for me to book a sales call with somebody is to get them to just click on my Calendly link, to entice a relationship from listening to my podcast that they feel compelled to click on that. But you want to know what? I never expect them to click on that first. Never, ever would I expect them to click on that first. I know that it takes a while of planting these seeds and building these relationships and growing them over time to have somebody click and then sell them something, And so that's one thing if I could leave you with anything, is like to remember that you don't eat the fruit the day you plant the seed.
Today's episode of Podcasting Secrets is brought to you by Pod Allies, the done-for-you podcasting services solution. When I speak with CEOs about their podcast, one of the most common comments that I hear is that they know they need a podcast, but they don't have time. Have you ever wondered how some businesses find a way to still run their podcasts while juggling their crazy day-to-day operations? The secret might be simpler than you think. Let me introduce you to Pod Allies. This is a service that's changed the game for businesses in the podcasting world. Pod Allies is a done-for-you podcast production and marketing service. They understand that while many businesses understand the immense value podcasting can have for their business, finding time to produce, syndicate, promote, and monetize a show can be challenging. Pod Allies offers a dedicated team to handle virtually all aspects of your podcast production. From strategy and branding to audio and video editing and guest scheduling, they've got you covered. They even take care of creating blog posts, transcripts, and syndicating your content across multiple platforms. What sets Pod Allies apart is their use of PodUp, their proprietary podcasting software suite. This allows them to streamline the entire podcasting process, saving you time, effort, and a bunch of money. If you're ready to become a thought leader, connect with your audience, and grow your business through podcasting without all of the investment of time and cost of doing it yourself, Pod Allies might be the perfect solution for you. To learn more or to schedule a free consultation with a podcast expert, visit podallies.com. That's podallies.com. Now back to the show. Okay, so you're talking about building these relationships. Can you talk to us a little bit more of how do you build those relationships with your audience, and why is that so important? How does that benefit your consulting business?
Yeah, I really would love to just say, a lot of times we think about demographics, like we think about age, and we think about maybe gender or income or like city or state if you have a geographical style podcast, but we less likely think about the psychographics or the behavioral psychographics of people. And so really understanding your audience can help you build a better relationship with them. So what are their values? What are their beliefs? What are their interests? Their lifestyle habits, their activities, their hobbies? What are their opinions on things in life? Are they loyal to you already, or are they loyal to any organizations or any businesses like yours that you can kind of understand their patterns of past engagement? Understanding who these people are and what helps them build trust in other people, and doing that research, doing that analysis behind the scenes can exponentially help how you show up for those people. Like, come right out and say, I don't have a one-person avatar that I speak to. I don't have a person in mind where I'm like, her name is Lisa and she's 36 and she does this for a living. I don't have that at all. But what I do have is the ability to know what I feel like when I'm talking to a friend, when I'm talking to somebody I care about. And we all have that inside us. We all know what it's like to talk to somebody, one person that we care about. And if we can identify the type of person that we're talking to and then talk to them like we're having coffee with them and talk to them like it's real life, then you'll have a much better experience and you'll have a happier time running your business.
Yeah, because they'll feel like they belong to something instead of just listening to a show to get education. Let's talk about monetization for a minute. Are there any other like surprising or innovative ways that podcasts can generate income for consultants?
Well, of course, there is the way of you can get sponsorships depending on what your niche is, right? I know somebody who has a manufacturing podcast, and he is one of the few people who podcasts about this very specific subject within manufacturing. And because of that, his listenership is just out of this world because there's no other podcast like it. And because he has that opportunity, he's able to get these amazing sponsorships with companies because they know that all of these people are listening to this manufacturing podcast, but it is such a very specific place, you know? I guess what I always want to tell people is when you get into podcasting, if you're getting into podcasting to just immediately believe that that's how you make money, then you might not be podcasting. You might be mistaken at first, basically. You might have a harder time understanding how that process works. And I guess the story that I like to give is, kind of the case of the real life networking event. So if you're at a real life networking event and you've been to like a BNI or like a chamber event or something like that, right? Like where you kind of have to go shake hands with people and get to know them. Okay. So like, let's say you're at a networking event and you get there and you get your drink and you're standing there and someone comes up to you and they just immediately pitch you right away. And you're like, whoa, wow, that was, okay, that's great. What the chances of you doing business with that person?
But how many of us follow that exact same strategy with our email marketing or our LinkedIn marketing?
Think exactly my point. Yes. So, however, the second scenario at a networking event might be that somebody comes up to you and they ask you just a very engaging question. But as you're answering that question, they're like for me, they're looking over me because I'm very short. They're like looking over me to see who the more interesting person is in the room that they might want to talk to next, like who has more clout or who is more important. And they're not actually listening to your answer. They're just kind of asking you to ask because someone told them to ask these 3 questions at a networking event, right? We've all experienced these types of encounters. The third encounter is you meet someone at this networking event, you shake hands, you get to know each other, you both ask each other questions. The conversation is just flowing. You find things that you have in common. You find people that that you both know. You make plans to have coffee next week, and then you go out and you have coffee with them. And after these couple of different touch points where you really get to understand each other, that's when you finally start doing business together. And for some reason, we think that, well, I can't say that every single person thinks this, but for some reason, many people think that the first way or the second way is how you do things in real life. Like, well, I ask engaging questions every week and no one's answering them. Like, I must be doing it wrong, or I'm telling people about my services. Why is no one buying? It's not necessarily how it works. Everything boils down to trust and building those relationships with people. And so when we talk about monetization, I want you to think about how you are thinking about monetization. How are you thinking about those relationships that you're building with people? Because if this sales part of podcasting feels forced and strained to you, it might be because it's not aligned with how you make real connections in real life. And if you think about how you make real connections in real life, you'll have a much easier time connecting with your audience who will buy from you because they will be the correct, qualified, right audience for you.
And if you think how we really make connections in real life, a lot of that comes from word of mouth marketing. It's a referral from a trusted source. How does word of mouth marketing play a role in podcasting and running a consulting business?
Well, that's number 5 on my wheel of the foundational things. And number 5 is, how do you want people to talk about your podcast? How do you want people to refer you or give you testimonials? So one thing you can do is just simply tell people at the end, let me tell you exactly what I do. At the end of my podcast, and I mean every word of this, I tell people, hey, if you liked this episode, please reach out to me and let me know. Or if you want to leave a review, you can do so right on whatever platform that you're using to listen to this podcast. You would not believe how much it means to me when you leave a review. And I say that with the most sincerity because it actually does make a huge difference to me. It really does mean something to me. Yeah. And so I just tell people, and I'm honest with how that feels. One of my favorite podcasts is called We Can Do Hard Things with Glenna Doyle. And at the end of every episode, she says something like, if you liked this episode, can you leave us a review? And if you didn't like it, it's okay.
You don't need to.
And I just think it's so funny because most people who are listening to the full episode obviously really liked the episode. They're not going to listen all the way through and be like, I hated that, right? So it's cute because obviously the people who are listening really like the podcast. But it reminds me, like, this is a real person, and that review actually really means something to them. And they say, hey, and we read every single review that you post. We read them all to ourselves. So knowing that this author who everyone loves is actually reading the review that I wrote, that's special to me. So of course I'm going to leave a review. Encouraging people to know that you are really paying attention and this actually means something to you can be really helpful in the way that you want people to refer you, the way that you want them to leave you testimonials, and the way that you want them to interact with you in the future.
I know sometimes consultants are concerned about giving away too much information for free because then the people won't hire them, right? How do you find that balance between free value content and kind of gating our consulting wisdom?
That's a great question. There's a lot of people out there that will say kind of like, kind of entice people and give them just enough and then shut it down, and get them to book a call with you. I don't really believe in that method because I believe in sharing the things that you know. And I believe that the more I share personally, like even being on the summit, sharing with you the ways that I do things, the way I share is going to inspire someone else who is going to say, hey, I learned this from Lauren and I thought it was really useful. And someone's going to say, who's Lauren? And they're going to say, oh, her Instagram is L Davis Creative. Go follow her. She's got lots of good tips and she posts cute stories of her dog. And then that person could say, I have a dog. I love dogs. And then they're going to come to my profile and see that I love red wine and we love red wine also. And this is going to be like a beautiful friendship and that person will end up hiring me. And that's the way that this works. You don't need to gatekeep tons of information. Should you do an entire consulting call explain every working and every framework that you do in intense detail on the interview or on your podcast episode? You don't have to, that's for sure. One way that sometimes I look at how to give the most value is I tell myself on podcast interviews that I will explain why I do things the way I do. I'll say what I did and then I'll explain why. But when somebody wants to figure out how to do something, that's when they hire me to work with them. How do I get more engagement from the stage? How do I get my podcast to blow up in the first week? How do I launch my book from the stage? How do I build a path for my customers? That's when they're going to call me to work with them. But first they need to know why. First they need to have buy-in and understand why it's important. So I'll always tell them why.
What is the biggest challenge that podcasters / consultants face, and how do we overcome that?
Biggest challenge that podcasters face. I feel like it's different for everyone, but one of the things that I talk about a lot with my friends who also have podcasts is, and some of them that have top podcasts, where their podcasts are top 25, big names. We laugh about often like that podcast audience members are very quiet. So like they are listening, they're building maybe a more intimate relationship than you know with them. Like one time I went to London and someone found me at a event and said, I listen to your podcast. And I was just like, wow, that's so cool, right? Like, because you don't know them and they're not as vocal as engaging with people online. So sometimes they'll reach out and they'll say, hey, I listened to your podcast. It was so great. I loved this episode. Of course, that like makes my day every time. And I'm happy to always have a conversation with them. But for the majority of the people listening, you can see that they're listening. You can see that people are downloading or how, when they're listening to in the podcast, but they're sometimes very quiet. And so it's really about that building that relationship over time and seeing where it goes and trusting the process.
Thank you, Lauren, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. If our audience enjoyed what they learned, how can they learn more about you and your services?
Well, I love hanging out on Instagram, so I'm L Davis Creative there. My website is laurendaviscreative.com. And I think I shared a link with you, which you'll share with them for 100 social media prompts or content prompts for people who are building their personal brand. So there's over 100 prompts for people to use to either stimulate some creativity for their next episode or for a social media post or for a story or for storyboarding something for themselves, whatever they want to use it for.
And for those of you that are watching or listening, make sure you click on the link below and check out the VIP Summit upgrade, where you can see some fun bonuses that we're offering at absolutely no charge to you. Thank you. Have a fabulous day. Good luck with your personal branding, and good luck either adding a consulting practice to your podcast or adding a podcast to your consulting practice. And here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, podcasting builds trust by reaching listeners in intimate spaces, commutes, workouts, and daily routines, creating stronger connections than traditional marketing. Number 2, focus on 3 connection points with potential clients: podcasts, email lists, and social media to maintain relationships across platform changes. Number 3, success requires understanding audience psychographics, values, beliefs, and interests beyond basic demographics. Number 4, treat podcast promotion like real-life networking. Build relationships before selling. Avoid immediate pitches. Number 5, share expertise freely through why explanations, reserving detailed how-to guidance for consulting services. Number 6, create strategic operating systems for converting listeners to clients, show note links, discovery calls, email funnels, etc. Number 7, build discoverability through SEO-optimized podcast descriptions, guest appearances, and consistent content creation. And finally, number 8, generate word-of-mouth marketing by encouraging reviews and making genuine connections with listeners. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Podcasting Secrets. I wish you success in your podcasting journey. If you're looking for a phenomenal podcasting platform with more than 50 tools to help you create, grow, and monetize your podcast, you can go get a free trial at podup.com. And if you need help with your podcast, we offer done-for-you podcast production and marketing services. You can record the episode, and then we take care of essentially everything else. You can learn more about that at podallies.com.